Hi, it's Scott here from Money Nerd, and for those that don't know, we use insider knowledge to help people beat debt collectors and become debt free. And in this quick video, I'm going to show you how to deal with JC International Acquisitions. You've probably received a letter from JC International Acquisitions or even had them knocking at your door. When I had debt collectors chasing me back in 2010, it caused me a lot of stress and anxiety, and to be honest, plenty of sleepless nights. But since then, I've worked in the credit card industry for over 10 years, and I'm happy to say that I've been able to use my insider knowledge to become debt free and help thousands of other people out of debt. So today I'd like to share my knowledge by answering 5 frequently asked questions like, are JC International Acquisitions even a legitimate company? How to reduce your repayment amounts? How to stop JC International from contacting you? What happens if you ignore them? And what they're not allowed to do when they're collecting your debt. At the end of this video, I have a bonus tip on how to write off some of your debt, so stick around to the end. Okay, question number 1. Are JC International Acquisitions even legitimate? Well, if you've received a letter in the post from them, this is probably your first question. If you don't recognize the company name, it might be that they've purchased your debt or they're a debt collector collecting on behalf of another company. JC International tend to collect their debts through a UK registered company called Credit Link Account Recovery Solutions. And whilst there are a bunch of scams out there when it comes to debt collectors, I'm afraid this is unlikely to be a scam. However, you should never pay unless you're certain that the debt is yours. You're well within your rights to ask JC International to provide proof that the debt is yours. I have a free letter template which you can use to confirm if the debt is yours and how much you owe. It's totally free and I'll link that in the description below. Question number 2. What happens if you ignore JC International Acquisitions debt collectors? Well, if you ignore debt collectors, your problem could escalate and become very serious. JC International does have the right to take court action against you. And if you were to ignore court letters, you could end up with a county court judgment or what you might recognize as a CCJ. This can have a major impact on your credit score and your chances of borrowing money in the future. If you do get a CCJ and you still don't pay, this could ultimately result in bailiffs coming to your home to take your valuable items or even your car. So please, please, please don't ignore them, and we'll get to what you should do later in this video. Question number 3. What are the rules that JC International have to follow? Despite being legally appointed to collect your debt or outright owning your debt, there's several things that JC International cannot do when it comes to collecting your debts. Knowing what they can and can't do when it comes to collecting your debts will make you feel a lot more comfortable and confident when dealing with them. So here's the things they're legally not allowed to do. They're not allowed to visit your place of work without you giving them specific permission to do so. Before this rule was in place, some debt collectors would show up while you're working and try and make things awkward for you as a way of pressurizing you into paying. And on a similar note, they're not allowed to speak to neighbors, friends, or family about your debt. Again, this is to stop them trying to embarrass you or shame you into paying your debt. JC International can't contact you or visit your home at unreasonable times of the day. For phone calls, most people would agree that calls before 8 a.m. are too early and calls after 9 p.m. are too late. But your circumstances may be different, for example, if you work night shifts. If you can't take calls during certain times, then tell them. They should keep a record of this and avoid calling you during these times. By the way, for home visits, the regulations say that debt collectors need to clearly explain the purpose and the intended outcome of the proposed visit, and they need to give you adequate notice of the date and the likely time that they're going to visit. You're well within your rights to complain if they keep calling or visiting your homes that at times you've told them to avoid. Next, it's also good to know that they're not allowed to act in a threatening or intimidating way. Also, they should never pressurize you into paying larger installments than you can afford or hitting payments deadlines that are impossible. The regulations also say that they're not allowed to pressurize you into selling your home or to take out more credit to pay off the debts. And the last thing that debt collectors can't do is pretend to be bailiffs or enforcement agents. Unlike bailiffs, debt collectors can't force their way into your house or refuse to leave if you ask them to. And they're certainly not allowed to take any of your belongings or clamp your car. Question number 4, how long can you be chased for debt? Well, under the Limitation Act of 1980, a creditor has 6 years to chase most unsecured unpaid debts or 12 years for some mortgage debts. The limitation period starts from the time of your last payment or when you last acknowledged the debt. Ultimately, debt collectors can't enforce their debts through the courts after 6 years of no payments and no acknowledgement of the debt. However, if they've already taken you to court and registered a CCJ against you, there's no end date. Okay, last question. Then I have a bonus tip on how you can potentially write off some of your debt. Question number 5. How do I pay less and come to an agreement with JC International Acquisitions? Well, there's a number of ways you might be able to reduce the amount that you repay. If JC International are adding interest and charges to your debt, then you could ask them to freeze that to help you get back on track and clear your debts quicker. Debt collectors are more likely to stop or reduce interest and charges if you can prove that you're in financial difficulties. So I'd suggest you put together a budget showing your income and essential living costs so you can clearly demonstrate that you're in financial difficulties. You can also use that budget to negotiate reduced payments. Again, for this, you'll need to show why you can't afford those higher repayments. So use that budget to write down your income and essential living costs so you can clearly demonstrate what you can afford. Sometimes debt collectors will only agree to reduce payments for a set period of time. Then at the end of this period, they'll want a review of your situation. Other times, they'll agree to much longer repayment periods, and all of this will totally depend on the nature of the debt and your individual circumstances. If you do have the cash, you could make a full and final settlement offer. This is where you ask if they'll accept a lump sum instead of the full balance. And in return for that lump sum, some debt collectors will agree to write off the remainder of the debt. And as promised, here's my bonus tip on how you can write off some of your debt. And it's not just with JC International, by the way. If you have debts with other people, there's lots of ways you can significantly reduce your repayments and even write off some of your debt. During my career in the credit card industry, I discovered that there are 7 relatively unheard of debt solutions that are available in the UK. The industry doesn't really advertise many of these, as most of them are either free or low cost. Now, unfortunately, these solutions are not available to everybody. You do need to be in specific circumstances, but there's probably at least one of these 7 solutions that you do qualify for. You could either be paying less than you do already, or maybe even write off some of your debt. To make it simple for you, I've created a free eligibility checker, which I've linked to in the description below. It's just 5 simple questions. It takes less than 30 seconds to do. It's questions like, what is the total amount of your debt? How many people do you owe money to? What country do you live in? Simple questions like that. It takes less than 30 seconds, and you can find out if you can reduce your repayments and even write off some of your debt. So click the link in the description below and go and do that now.